OptiCall. I'm going to be behind the scenes. I'm the moderator on today's presentation on Phone Etiquette 101, how to convert more calls to consults. Just a couple housekeeping items. If you have any questions, you can submit them on the panel during the presentation. We'll try to make some time here at the end of the presentation to stick around for any additional questions. And we do plan on, or we are recording today's event. I'd like to present today's speaker. Today's speaker is the President and CEO of OptiCall, Bill Mercier. Bill, are you with us?
I am. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate everybody getting on the phone with us this afternoon and the time that you're giving us. We've got a lot of things that we want to go over and leave some time for questions at the end. First, we want to go into just to let you know a little bit about who we are, especially because we're here to talk about the telephones and processes on the phone. And we want to give everybody on the phone call today the understanding that this is what we do. We've been around since 2002. We're a call center based in Sarasota, Florida. And when I say call center, I use that term for lack of any better way to really explain it. Basically, we're a relationship center, and our goal is to talk to patients and convert them for practices. We currently work for over 130 practices nationwide, and our primary type of phone call that we take is that elective surgery phone call. We're the only dedicated call center that does this type of thing, handling that new elective patient inquiry that we're aware of out there. So some of the things we want to discuss today, we want to understand some of the issues that practices are facing today. In order to be a successful practice, what do we need to do and what do we need to focus on as it relates to the telephone and phone calls that are coming in? I want to talk about the cost of proper phone call handling and improper phone call handling and show some missed opportunities that are out there that with just a little bit of tweaks in your phone process that you can capitalize on a lot of patients that you might be missing. I want to talk about the customer service mindset, how important that is with people that are taking telephone calls and that they're mindful of the experience that they are giving to the patient that's calling in, whether they're an existing patient or a new prospect. We're going to go over the anatomy of a phone call and how it structures in the 13 years of handling phone calls ourselves, how we've put it together that works best for us, and hopefully some of these tools can help your practice out as well. And we're going to review some practice phone calls throughout the process as we're trying to prove some points or get across some points that we want to show you examples of how things go, whether they're right or wrong or in need of improvement. So let's get started with, we want to know who's on the phone with us today and roles in the practice. So Dylan, you're going to launch a poll or two polls here just to learn a little bit more about our audience.
Yes, and for whatever reason, I don't think you can see the poll while it's up here, Bill. So the options are front desk, telephone staff, patient coordinator, administrator, doctor, consultant, or other. And we've already got over half the audience that have voted. So just leave this up for just a few more seconds here.
Should I minimize my presentation so I can see the results?
No, I think it just comes up above your presentation, so I'm just going to read them off to you.
Okay.
So for telephone staff and front desk, we've got 35% of our audience, patient coordinators 18%, administrators 6%, doctors 6%, and consultants or other at 35%. We've got a pretty good mix on today's presentation. Did you get all that, Bill?
Very good. I did, yes. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, good deal. And did you have another poll to learn about the industries?
Yes, and then the next poll, and we'll stop with the polls after this, is just if you could tell us which industry you're in. I know we've got people from vision, dental, plastic surgery and aesthetics, hearing, and some other verticals. Leave this up for about 5 more seconds. We've got over 3/4 of the audience has voted. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. So for vision, we've got 59% of our audience, dental 35%, Comprised plastic surgery and aesthetics with 0, hearing 0, and other is 6%.
Interesting. Okay. Very good. Well, welcome aboard, and thank you for coming on the phone with us today. So here's one of the TV shows that I really like that's out there today. And if you have not seen the show, I would encourage you to find it on your guide and record it and watch it. It's called The Prophet. There's a gentleman by the name of Marcus Lemonis. He's a billionaire. And essentially what he does is he invests in businesses that are failing. Perhaps they were doing well at one point, but for one reason or another, at this point in time, they are failing. And he goes into the business, and the primary three topics that he focuses on, he calls them the 3 Ps, are people, process, and product. And so what we want to talk about is we want to think about how these can relate to the practices that we work in, and how can we apply some of these concepts in looking at the process, the people, not so much the product, but the process and the people, and what can we do to tweak those or do our best with what we have to have a successful business. And so, when it comes to a product, products evolve over time. They improve over time. If you think about the specialties that are on the phone today with vision and dentistry, and if we had some any of the other verticals, the 6% that have chimed in, we have had major improvements in technology, whether they be lasers that are better. The results that we're giving our patients are better than ever in almost every specialty that's out there. So, but the one thing to understand about products is that you'll never have a competitive advantage with any type of technology or with price. These are things that can be easily duplicated. If you get a new laser, your competition can get a new laser. If you drop your price, your competition can drop the price. So those aren't the areas to compete. The areas to compete really boil down to what type of experience are you giving that patient when they're calling in, and then when they're coming in and going through the process of a treatment at your practice. And that's where your biggest competitive advantage can be, because your competition can't easily duplicate that. So let's start with the process. And I want to chat a little bit about one of the big problems that practices have all across the United States right now, regardless of the specialty that you're in. We need to answer the phone. And the problem is we aren't. When we have looked at over 1,000 phone calls that have come in for practices and the missed opportunity that are coming in, and I can tell you we have a lot of different programs that we analyze practice phone calls. What we're finding is that 34% of the callers that are calling in are not answered by a live person. That's a huge, huge missed opportunity. That means we don't have enough people to pick up on the prospects that are calling in. These could be new patients that are calling in about your services, or existing patients that are calling in and they're just trying to book an appointment and come in to see you, yet we're not answering those phone calls because we don't have enough staff. So let's see what this really breaks down to. Our phones are leaking. It looks like my graphic popped back in front there. Let's fix that. Let's say a practice receives 25 phone calls a day. Now we'll just say this is new patients, because we know a lot of practices that are on the phone may actually receive 250 phone calls a day. But let's say there's 25 new patients. That's 500 new patient opportunities a month. Well, if we assume, this is assuming 1 in every 5 calls is an appointment opportunity, 34% of those go completely unanswered. So what ends up happening is these new prospects, 500 new potential patients, we're only answering 366 of these. We're losing 66 potential opportunities. If we were to answer all of those phone calls, we'd have 100 opportunities. And if you think about the price of the services that you offer, just by simply answering the phones, by hiring that extra person or whatever it may be, so that these calls are not going unanswered, the revenue is substantial. So in a typical day in a medical practice, there's a lot of different reasons why calls aren't being answered, or different scenarios of what happened. So here's one scenario. A new potential patient is calling in looking for pricing information on a procedure and is immediately greeted with, "Thank you for calling Dr. XYZ, can you hold please?" And they go on hold. And the one thing that we need to understand about the patients that are calling in is that they don't have 10 minutes to sit on hold. They don't have 2 minutes to sit on hold. They need their questions answered. They need to book that appointment because they're, for the most part, making these appointments when they're at work and they just got a 10-minute break. And if they cannot book that appointment right now because they can't get through, that may be put off for a day, a week, a month, or they may go somewhere else. Another situation that happens that contributes to the leaking of phone calls is a new patient calling in looks for information on a procedure, and the staff give them all of the process and all the details and all the information they need, but they never actually invite them in. And the caller gets off the phone with all of the information that they need, but they didn't book. Something as simple as inviting somebody in makes a huge difference because they don't know that they can necessarily just come in. And I can't tell you how many phone calls I've heard where somebody will say, well, we do offer a free consultation, but they don't invite them in. So you have to follow through with that. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the actual process of the phone call itself and the flow of a phone call. And the last caller is looking for an appointment for a specific date and time next week, but there's nothing available in the calendar. So they get off the phone and they state that they will call back. The big question is, do they call back? And the big answer is, many times they don't. They'll seek a service from somebody else that referred them to another doctor because they can get in sooner. So there are quite a few challenges that we have, answering the phones, and then how are we answering them? So let's take a look at this. If a practice receives 5 calls a day and 500 calls a month, and 1 in 4 phone calls through these reviews and investigations that we've done is let off the phone with no action, what does that cost? You've got 100 opportunities, 25 lost leads, and let's say if you're talking about vision, $5,000 for bilateral LASIK, that's $125,000 because we didn't invite somebody in or take the time to really do the right thing on the phone and get that patient to come into us and not go to the competition. There's a lot of money that's being left on the table, and that's what we want to focus in on. How do we handle this? What do we do to put our best foot forward to create the best experience in order to get them in? There are so many different people that make up a successful practice. Obviously, you need your patients that are coming in. You need the doctor. People aren't going to get into they aren't going to come into the office if you don't have a good doctor that has good bedside manner. Administrator is an integral for this in keeping everybody organized and keeping the whole system moving forward. If it weren't for the billing person, you wouldn't get the money coming in the door to pay everybody. So everybody is so important to the practice and the function of the practice. But the fact of the matter is nobody gets in the front door unless they talk to the person on the phone first. And here's the challenge with this. These are the employees that usually receive the least amount of medical education. I can tell you I have been in practices that have done phone trainings in front of the entire group of people, and there are people answering the phones and they've only been with the practice for 2 days. They don't know what they're talking about yet. And so that in and of itself, if you get a sense that somebody doesn't have confidence about the issue that you have, they can hang up and call another practice. One of the other challenges that we have at the front desk is they're put in cramped cubicles. They're out of sight, out of mind. Sometimes they're in triage centers in separate buildings, completely separate and aside from the patients. And sometimes they're actually put right at the front desk. And then what ends up happening in this scenario is they're expected to multitask. They're checking patients in and checking them out and collecting co-pays and scheduling follow-ups and ordering tests and doing everything. And then that phone call comes in and they're expected to switch hats. And there's so many things going on, yet this is the very first touch point that our patients and our potential patients have with us. And so how do we create the best experience? Who do we have answering our phones? So let's move a little bit over towards the people side of things. We want to understand what type of people come and make up a practice. There are a lot of different personalities that can be on the phones. I'm sure in your own experiences, when you call around, sometimes you get a great experience. Sometimes you don't get such a great experience. So let's talk a little bit about the whole idea of perception and image and first impressions and how important they are. There's been a study done that found that it takes approximately 30 seconds for somebody to start to form an impression on you, and they're going to form that impression on education level, career competence, personalities, level of sophistication, whether they trust you, sense of humor, cleanliness, all of those different things. And in fact, it takes only 5 to 7 seconds for somebody to look at you and decide, is this somebody I can trust? And they're looking at everything that your facial expressions, how you're dressed, all of these different things are coming into play. Now, really one of the problems when it relates to the phone is that when you look at first impressions and what makes up the first impression, 55% of that comes from visual. Well, if the person's walking into your office, that's incredibly important because they're going to see the person at the front desk. They're going to see how they're dressed and how their hair is, and do they look like they just crawled out of bed, or are they well put together and organized, and does it look like a nice, neat presentation? But the challenge with the telephone is that we don't have that visual piece of it. So now it breaks down to 2 other things. It breaks down to vocals, which is your tone, and the verbal, the contents, and words that you're saying. Now, here's the interesting part about this. A lot of us think what we say on the phone is the most important thing. And in fact, it isn't. It's actually tone. Tone makes a huge difference in whether that experience is going to be a good one or not so good. And if you listen, and I challenge everybody on the phone call today, over the next day or two, in every phone call that you take or make, listen for what the other person sounds like on the phone. Do they sound like they're smiling? Do they sound like they're excited about their job? Do they sound like they're into what they're doing, or do they sound like they're just there sitting at their desk trading time for money? And I think what once you start to really be aware of the tones that you're hearing, you're going to get a completely different impression on businesses and how they run. So, Dylan, I think anytime we have this little phone icon here, we have a phone call that we want to play. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Why don't we queue up our first
You ready for the call?
Sure.
Okay. And just for disclaimer, this isn't an OptiCall phone call. This is a recorded mystery shot that we place to a practice.
Calling? Could you please hold? Oh, sure. Thank you.
If seeing is believing, nose stitch cataract surgery.
Thank you for holding. How can I help you? Hi. How much is LASIK? You're asking for general information? Yeah, in regards to our LASIK? Right. Okay. Well, we do have a promotion going on right now. And that would be $400 savings. But that ends August 31st. And if you're just interested in knowing the pricing, we do have free consultations. And it would be, well, if I can find my little paper here, approximately for both eyes. Oh my goodness, when you want something, you can't find it. Okay. And that would be on a range of anywhere from $21.50 to $23.50 an eye. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Were you able to hear that okay, Bill?
Yeah, I could hear it perfectly. Hopefully everybody else on the phone call heard that as well. So Dylan, since I don't have the luxury of chatting with everybody else on the phone and getting their impressions, what do you feel? How do you feel about that phone call, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it felt like she wasn't prepared to take that phone call, and she was anxious to get off the phone call as well. Like it felt like she was doing her job if she was answering the question, and she was happy to get off the call with the patient or the prospective patient.
I think you're right on.
She might not have a motivated interest to schedule the appointment.
She could have definitely been better prepared, where she's fumbling around for a sheet and didn't know. But the bottom line is, and I can tell you, I've heard staff members tell me this, is sometimes they're terrified to answer these calls. If a call comes in for a general appointment, then they're good because it's more of an appointment. It's like an order taking for an appointment. And so that's a simple thing to do. Sure, let me look you up in the system, or let me put you in our system, and you need this type of appointment. Sure, let me schedule you for that. And all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. But these calls are different because it's somebody calling up and they're calling other practices as well, and trying to sound confident when you're not can be a challenge. And so, I literally had people tell me that they're terrified to take these elective surgery calls with all the different technologies that are available today. So, and that's why we want to get into how do you structure phone calls. So let's just throw a fun fact out there. 94% of most marketing budgets are spent on persuading the customer to actually pick up the phone to call, but we only put 6% of our budgets towards handling that call when it comes in. And that is, I know practices that spend tens of thousands of dollars every single month to get the phones to ring, and they're just not prepared to answer them when they do ring, and it's wasted money. So think about some of the customer experiences that you've had and some of your favorite companies out there. And I'll just give you an example of one company that I was really impressed with recently, and they're not on this list. And anytime I've ever visited them in the past, I was not impressed, and that's McDonald's. And for another talk, we'll get into the whole idea of how do you hire people, how do you create the right culture, and keep that organization motivated, and that'll be a whole nother seminar we can do. But this particular McDonald's was different than any other McDonald's that I had been in. And when I went up to the front desk or front counter with my daughter and we ordered breakfast, there was a smile on their face in repeating the order back to me, and at the end of the order, thanking me and telling me to have a nice day. And then there was some kind of commotion that went on over towards the coffee maker, and the manager had to turn around and come back out and give some help. And when the manager turned around, she had this big, bright smile on her face, came out, helped the customer out, smiled as she came back through, said hello to us. And to me, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, that's a company that has understood now that they have a problem. If you've been in other McDonald's, I'm sure anybody on the phone has been in McDonald's, and it's not that experience. You get people that don't even look like they want to acknowledge that you're standing in front of them. But this one was different. And it was so impressive because you could see that motivation came from the manager herself and motivating her own team to continue to do what they're doing. And so that customer service mindset is critically important for you and for the rest of your staff. They need to understand how important that experience is, from the very first person who's answering the phone all the way through the process where somebody comes in and then they leave and go on their merry way. The entire group of people need to understand how important that customer service mindset is. So in today's business mentality, if you're not going to take care of your patients, somebody definitely will. So let's take a look at, why are we losing control on the phone? Well, sometimes we just have the wrong people answering the phones. And that, back to my challenge that I made to you earlier in the presentation, listen to the people that you're talking to as you're making your phone calls over the next day or two. Are they the right or the wrong person? In your own organization, how do they sound? Some people, or some practices that pick up, the people that are picking up on the phone have improper training or no training at all. We just heard on this previous telephone call that the person didn't know the price and had to look it up and have it in front of them. Well, if you don't know the price because the price is changing all the time, or it's not something that you have to reference very often because you're not doing that many procedures, have it right in front of you where it's visible, so you're not having to fumble it around. Sometimes phone staff are multitasking, and that's something I'm not good at doing. I cannot talk on the phone and type an email at the same time. And unfortunately, because of the way a lot of practices are set up, they have to multitask. And then the final piece here is staff turnover. Staff turnover has a huge impact on quality of telephone calls and how they're being handled, because once you get somebody fully trained how you want to do them and they leave, now you have to start back at ground zero. So Dylan, let's listen to another phone call that we've got queued up here.
All right, here we go. It takes a second here.
Shelley?
Hi, I am calling about LASIK eye surgery, and I was just wondering what your price is per eye.
Eye LASIK you're calling about?
Yeah.
Or are you calling about the custom LASIK with the blade?
To be honest, I don't know. This is the first I've ever checked into it.
Okay.
I just want to be
The
able
eye
to see.
LASIK, what was that?
I just want to be able to see.
You just want to be able to see?
Yeah.
Okay, the eye LASIK is done with a laser,
Okay.
and the custom LASIK is done with the blade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the price difference, I guess?
Well, the eye LASIK, 2 eyes is $4,500, and I think $90 for tax.
Okay.
And the custom LASIK is $3,366.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Did you want to any?
All right,
So I know the volume was a little softer on that.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
I could still hear it. Hopefully everybody else could still hear it fine. So, Dylan, your thoughts on that? What did you hear on that phone call?
Well, I think she wants to help. She's trying to explain the different technology, but doesn't feel like she knows how to control the phone call or how to guide the caller to the next step. So it's almost a little awkward there at the end, rather than having some sort of roadmap, knowing how to go through the exploration. Education.
I think you're right on, because if we look at these bullet points that we've got up in front of us here, this is an example of improper training and not knowing how to handle this telephone call. In fact, at the one point you could actually hear she turned around to confirm that she was giving the right answer from her coworker.
I heard that as well.
That's one of the reasons why understanding the flow of a phone call and how important that is critical to answering calls successfully. Now, we're talking about some elements of scripting, but I'm not talking about such hard-coded scripting that you're reading verbatim from words on a piece of paper. What we're talking about is really the flow of a phone call. And so the flow of a phone call, that we call it logical progression at OptiCall, that we've developed over time. It has a number of different components to it. We'll talk about each component. We'll play a phone call, see what it sounds like, and then relate it back to that particular section of the phone call and how it worked or how it didn't work in the example of the call. But we did this because we understood that there was a point where we got a phone system sophisticated enough to record our phone calls. And prior to this, we thought our staff was doing a great job on the phone because we could hear them. We knew people were booking. But what we didn't understand once we gained access to recorded phone calls was that everybody did their job, but they did it differently. And that doesn't really work. If we go back to Marcus Lemonis and that whole people process product, part of the process is creating a system that works, that we know that we can provide consistency whether one person's answering the phone or another person's answering the phone. And that's when we decided, let's do something about it. Let's structure our phone calls. And it breaks down into different sections. One is the introduction, and again, I'll go through each of these individually. The second part is exploration and learning about the caller's needs and what is it that they're interested in. The third piece of this is educating them on what to do next or answering some questions that they may have. And the fourth piece is closing the phone call. And what are they going to do when you're closing? Are they going to book the appointment, or are we going to offer them some information and do something with that and create some sort of a follow-up plan so it's not what we considered back in that in the early slides, 25% lost leads, people that we don't have any information on that we can't do any type of follow-up on. So before I get into the actual steps, I want you to understand who's actually calling the practice. Now I'm just going to minimize this presentation for a second and bring up a slide that talks about the educational spectrum of patients that are interested in procedures. Now this is around vision and around LASIK, but the same process follows through for people that are considering other types of procedures because, well, let's face it, this costs money. They could cost thousands of dollars out of their pocket, and they're weighing this against a vacation or a new car or other improvements in their house or whatever it may be. So there's a process that they go through. Now, if we look at this relative to LASIK and people wearing glasses or contacts, in any given time, 60 to 80% are currently really not even investigating. They're not interested in it right now. They've thought about it. They've ruled it out for the moment. They've kind of put it in their mental drawer, but they don't throw it away. They'd love to do it at some point, but it's just not a priority. So living with the problems that they currently have is okay with them, but they are still reachable. So a compelling message that you put out there in marketing efforts, whether it be radio, TV, Facebook, whatever it is, can get them to jump back into the spectrum. Once they are in the spectrum, they start to wonder what life is like to not have to wear glasses and contacts. They start to gain some information. They're asking their friends and relatives and associates if they know anybody that's had it done, did they have it done themselves? And as they continue, they start to do some heavy fact-finding. Now, at any point in time, these are people that can call in, and these are people that are calling into your practice. And these are the people that are calling in and asking primarily the price because they don't know what to ask and they don't know how to differentiate you from the practice down the street. So even though they're doing fact-finding and they're interested, the primary question that they're going to ask you is, how much does it cost? Now, as they're going through the process, they've learned enough about it. They've learned that they've got enough friends, know enough people that have had it, people ranting and raving. They get that pricing information. They wonder if it's going to work for them. And then they decide that they're going to schedule the visit. Let me move this over a little bit. They make the decision to have it, but not necessarily who they're going to have it from. And this is where they start to go into that heavy duty, let me call around and see how much this one costs, that one costs. And here's the thing that you need to remember. This is such a critical part of the telephone process and that first impression process and that whole idea behind creating the right customer service mindset, that this right here, even if you're more expensive than another practice, can make the difference between them coming to you or going to somebody else. Then as they move forward, they select the surgeon, they're a good candidate, and they have the procedure done. So that's essentially the process, whether it's plastic surgery, a major dental procedure, whatever it is, the decision-making process that they go through while they're thinking about having a procedure done. So now that we know who's calling, let's take a look at the individual steps and talk a little bit more about them and what happens. Now, this is the meat and potatoes of structuring a phone call, and you can do this regardless of the specialty that you're in. It's just a matter of structuring it and coming up with the right questions and responses that you're going to have. So the introduction really is, it's making a greeting and a proper greeting. Thank you for calling Jones Laser Center. This is Bill speaking. How may I help you today? And I can tell you that there's so many different ways that you can greet, whether it be thank you for calling, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it may be. But there are critical components that you should do on a phone call. And that's the introduction of the practice, the introduction of you, and asking how may you help today. Those three pieces are things that we've done in our own call center that have made a huge impact on how the beginning of the phone call starts. I can tell you in calling other practices that are out there, sometimes I'll have people that'll say, thank you for calling Jones Laser Center, and that's it. And in the same center, I'll call back again and get somebody else, and they'll have a completely different greeting. So it's important that within your own organization, you are all consistent with what's being said as soon as that phone is answered. And the whole idea behind consistency is creating a system that everybody does something very similar or the same. So one of the other things that we like to do is they're going to call in, they're going to ask for anything. I'd like to get some information on your procedure. Hey, I heard about your radio ad. Can you tell me more about that? What we like to do is say, great, I can definitely help you with that. Now, are you calling for yourself or somebody else? Now, just that little statement, great, I can definitely help you with that, puts them at ease. It makes them feel like they've reached the right place. even if they can't, if you're not the right person to help them, great, I can definitely help you with that. Let me transfer you over to billing, and they'll be able to take care of that matter for you. Whatever it is. Remember, we've only got a few seconds to create that first impression and create a great one. And in order to do this, we need to do it through our enthusiasm, through our tone, and then the words that we're saying are going to come through clear. And you can't very easily say, great, I can help you with that, without having a good tone to it, because it's just not going to come out right. So next piece of this is getting their name, finding out who you're talking to. As you can hear on some of these phone calls, they ask for the caller's name, and on some of them, they did not ask for the caller's name. And so why would we do this? Well, what we're trying to do in the beginning stages, in the introductory phase, is we're trying to learn about the patient. We're trying to control the call. We want to know who's on the phone. And even if you get just a first name, you have a phone call that is a potential lead that you can track. What happened with them at the conclusion of the phone call? Did they book? Did they not? Do they want information? Do they not want information? And tracking your phone calls and what happens to them is a critical part of a successful business, and knowing what to do, and helps you with your marketing efforts. In fact, part of the introductory phase 2 is asking, how did you hear about us today? So step 2 is the exploration phase. Step 2 is using questions that learn more about the patient's needs, whether, in vision, are they in glasses or contacts, or any of the other specialties? Do you know anybody who's had this done before? Have you been looking into this for a while? Have you ever been into a doctor's office? See if you might be a candidate for this. Whatever it is, there are certain questions around your specialty that you can create that start to learn more about what that patient's needs are. And Dylan, I believe we have a phone call queued up here. Let's listen to that.
Thank you for calling Latoya. How may I help you?
Hi, Latoya. I just had a question. I had a baby about 6 months ago, and I'm interested. I'm interested in a tummy tuck. How much does it cost?
Yeah, that's a great question. May I ask who I'm speaking with?
Yes, my name is Ruby.
Ruby, okay, so you had a baby 6 months ago, correct? Are you still breastfeeding?
No.
Okay, and may I ask how you heard about our office?
Just Google.
Oh, you Googled us? Okay. And how soon, Ruby, were you interested in having that procedure completed by?
Before the end of the year.
Okay, well, no worries. Well, Ruby, let me be the first one to welcome you to congratulations on your new baby. So, you wanted to know how much the tummy tuck is, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Well, once you come in for the consultation, Ruby, that's the best thing to do first is to come in for that consultation to be able to come in and meet with the doctor, go over all the questions. However, the tummy tuck can start as low as $5,500, and all of our fees are inclusive, meaning all of your surgery center fees, all of the surgeon fees, anesthesia fees, and any follow-up visits you may be needing after that surgery is complete will be covered in the final pricing. So the best thing to do is come in for that free consultation, be evaluated, and go over all the information with the doctor, Ruby. And did you have a certain doctor in mind?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Dylan, I cut that call off there. So what are you hearing on that phone call? Because I hear several different things.
Well, I'm trying to think. She did get the caller's name. She didn't ask for a phone number. She does go through some exploration, but it might not sound that natural necessarily. Would you agree with that?
I think you're absolutely right. I think this is somebody who's well trained. I think they've been trained to ask certain things and do certain things on the phone. And here's the challenge that we all have when you talk about structuring a phone call and scripting is how do you make that scripting sound natural? if you listen to this phone call again, she must have said the name Ruby at least 5 times in the 2 minutes of the phone call. And that is, I know that it's important to use a name in a phone call, and make it feel like it's a more personal connection. But there are times in that phone call where it was used in an unnatural way at the end of a sentence, and different ways like that. And so the key is that balance between trying to do what you're trained to do and do an efficient job and create the flow of the phone call, but it's also trying to sound natural and genuine. And that's one of the biggest challenges. So how do you do that? Well, the best way to do it is not to have scripting per se. If you have certain things that you want your staff to do, understand that there are different sections and what potential questions could you ask during the exploration phase. And, what would you do in the introduction phase? Have them down there, but don't write them down in a script that somebody's reading. And if you review the phone calls after and you don't sound natural, then find a different way to do it. And one of the things that we've experimented with in our own call center is trying to find out how often somebody, or how the time frame of the patient, how soon they're thinking about having it done. It seems like a natural question when you think about, somebody's considering having it done. And, some people have a great job or, very easy job of doing that. And other people find it more difficult to ask it because they feel like they're a salesperson. Well, it's a matter of finding your right words to present it that make you feel comfortable. So in the commitment for an appointment, or let's say you have a couple of different types of first visits. So, one might be just a brief consultation. Another one is a full examination for people who are more motivated. You can say to a patient, so just to get an idea of how soon you're thinking about having this done, because there's a couple of different steps that we can take. Do you have an idea? Is it sometime within the next 3 months or a year or whatever it may be? And they'll tell you, because you're giving them a reason for asking that question. So that's the whole idea behind this whole anatomy of a phone call, is to create the questions, but ask them in a way that you're comfortable, that it doesn't sound contrived and phony. And so let's move on.
So I was going to say maybe ask about their goals for the procedure before you get into a timeline, to learn a little bit more about what they're looking for.
No doubt. And that's what exploration is all about, is finding those questions that learns more about the caller and the patient's needs. And the reason is because the next step in the process is education. And once you know what they are interested in, what their goals are, what their problems are, then you can educate them on what their next step is. And you can answer some questions, and whether it be price-related questions or whatever it may be. But the one thing that we have to keep in mind is that we're not here to sell the procedure over the phone. I've had practices say to me, well, gosh, we want to give them all the information, answer every single question that they might have, and we think that's creating the right experience, and it's not. There's a fine balance between giving information over the phone, but you're really selling the consultation. So if there's anything that you get from this whole entire conversation that we're having today, it's you're there to sell the consultation, not the procedure. And if you keep that in mind, because you're selling the appointment and what's going to happen at the appointment, it makes your job a lot easier. And so let's queue up a phone call here and see how this one sounds.
All right.
Good afternoon, Dr. This is Mary. How may I help you?
I'm interested in having a LASIK procedure done, and I'm trying to find out what it costs, if you have anything going on.
Okay, let me get you my LASIK coordinator. Can you hold for a minute, please?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for holding. This is Keisha. How may I help you?
Hi, Keisha? Yes, I'm calling. I'm interested in having LASIK done, and I'm trying to find out if you offer, any financing, what your cost is, and if you offer any financing to help with that.
I am happy to answer those questions for you. Can I ask you your name and where you heard about us?
Yeah, my name's Danielle, and I just did a Google search.
Oh,
Very good. Okay, currently we are offering 0% financing for 24 months. That works out to be $75 a month per eye. The procedures are done by a doctor. He owns his own lasers, so they are done in one of our 2 surgery centers. We have one in the other. How could you know this for the interested? Okay. He uses a completely bladeless method for the laser surgery. It's a generation 4 interlane laser. Latest technology, state-of-the-art equipment, and facilities. Do you wear contacts? Yes. Okay. Are they the hard or soft contacts? Soft. Okay. If you're going to come in for the complimentary consultation, we do need you to be out of the contact for at least 5 days prior to the consultation, and that's because the contacts tend to change the shape of the eye. If it's determined by Dr. How long? 5 days. Okay. If it's determined by Dr. that you are a candidate for the LASIK surgery, he will need to do a fully dilated exam, and what that is a 3D picture of your eye, and that is going to allow him to give you the custom LASIK surgery so you'll get the best results from the procedure. Okay, now did you say there is or is not a charge for that? For the dilated exam, it's $175, and that includes your startup medications for the LASIK procedure. There's going to be the Flexi, which is an ocular blend, and also lubricating drops, which are preservative-free. Okay. And that's going to be your about a month supply of each of those drops, which you'll use before and after the surgery. Okay. Well, that's pretty much the information I needed right now. I'm really kind of just looking around, just starting to look into it. Okay. Did you want to set up a consultation? Not at this time. I really just kind of want to look around and look at my options and all of that good stuff. But thank you. If you have any other questions, please just call back. I also would like to tell you about our website. There's a lot of helpful information, biography, information about that. We've done over 20,000 eyes. There's more information about the financing options, frequently asked questions, things of that nature. Information about the lasers that he uses as well. And that web address is .com. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Keisha. I appreciate your time. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
So, Dylan, I hear a lot of elements of good training in there. I hear a lot of elements of needing some changes to how she's doing things. So you've got an employee that wants to do a great job and is very well educated and knows the process. What are you hearing in that falls in what we're doing?
Relative to all the mystery shops that we do, she did a pretty good job. There's always room for improvement, starting with the warm transfer at the beginning. If you transfer over to somebody in an ideal situation, you get the caller's name and a number in case you do get disconnected. And it'd be ideal if she could introduce the caller to Keisha before she takes over that phone call. And she sounds really friendly. She sounds knowledgeable. She asks for the name and asks for a marketing source, but she didn't get the caller's phone number. She also invited them in. She gave a lot of information, maybe a little bit of an overkill about the information that she gave, where I might recommend keeping it a little more simple. And it's great that she invites them in. As you know, on these mystery shops that we do, that's missed over 80% of the calls that we make, where the person on the other end either is afraid of rejection or maybe not trained properly or maybe doesn't have a vested interest in the practice. They don't see another dollar if there's another patient that comes in. But at the end of the day, even though I think she did a nice job, it's still something that we would score as a lost lead because there was no effort to capture the caller's information for future follow-up.
Exactly. You're right on. I mean, the one thing that we've got to keep in mind, and this is probably one of the reasons why so many people are terrified to take phone calls, is because they'll hear somebody like this woman who has been with the practice, obviously, for a while, who knows her stuff, and is spouting out information about the technology and Generation 4 interlays and all this stuff. And it's not that, we don't have to get into that level of complexity. The patient that's calling in doesn't know, because it could be the latest generation could be a 10 and you're still using a 4. So we don't know that. We don't have anything to compare it to, so there's no reason to give that out, and all the information on the drops and what's going to happen with those. That is the idea of selling the procedure rather than selling the appointment, what we just talked about. And then when we get into, as you had mentioned, Dylan, a lost lead. So she did a good job in getting the name in the beginning and inviting the person, seeing if they wanted to book an appointment. And when they didn't, she offered off the website, which is great. Anybody can go to the website, but what you don't have now is somebody you can follow up on. Even a name and an email address, if your information packet that you send is electronic. Yeah, hey, why don't I get you something out via email or via mail or something like that? This way you can, learn a little bit more about our practice. When you're ready to schedule that consult, feel free to give us a call, or I could follow up with you in a week or two. So it's about these 3 things in that final phase of the phone call, which is closing. You're going to book an appointment. If you're not going to book an appointment, find a way to ask if you can send information. Now, I will tell you, the majority of people on phone calls will say, yeah, that'd be great. And it'll allow you to get, if you're sending mail packets, their full name, address, telephone number, date of birth. Tell them you're going to put them into the system, so when they call back, you won't have to give all this information again. If it's just electronic packets, you get their full name and their email address, and you already, or their phone number too, and create a follow-up plan. And that's one of the biggest problems that practices have. We're making the phones ring, and we're not inviting them in, or we're not capitalizing on all of those prospects. And money is falling through the cracks because of this. And so there's simple things that can be done to fix this. So finally, I want to talk a little bit about creating the phone plan. And we only have a few minutes left here, and I want to save some time for some questions. So how do you create the right phone plan? Well, you have to uncover what's going on first and discover what's happening. And do you have a problem, or do you not have a problem, or what can be changed? And the only way to do that is to either mystery shop your practice or record some phone calls. Now, one of the other things that you can do is mystery shop some competitive practices. If you know there's a practice in your area that's just lighting it up and they're taking the market by storm and you're having a hard time keeping up, shop them. See what they sound like. What are they doing different than you? Who's answering the phones? Is it enthusiastic? What's going on with them that's different than what's going on in your practice? But it always gives you a reference point as to how you're doing versus other practices that are in the area. One of the other things that's incredibly important, we do this every single day. We have training sessions and review sessions with our staff because we do record those phone calls and we want to sit down with them, and we have what we call Kudos Corner. And anybody can elect, if they hear a good phone call going on, they can send it to our or tell our quality control manager, hey, I heard Mary take this phone call. It sounded fantastic. And you listen to it. I want to elect them for a Kudos ticket. And what the Kudos tickets do is you'll see a wheel up here. There's an actual wheel in our office. When they receive 3 tickets, they get a spin of the wheel. And the spin of the wheel is a reward system. Basically, we're looking for rewarding for great service, and we want to encourage great service because when you encourage them to do something that they're doing well, they will do it again. And so it ranges anything from a free lunch to a day off, a paid day off, to a half a day off, to you get to leave 15 minutes early. There's a whole bunch of different things that they can win on this. And the team's excited about it. They're excited about doing a good job and getting elected for doing a good job by their peers. They don't elect themselves. Their peers have to elect them for this. And it's one of the things that we've done. So this is just some of the things that you can do to create a phone plan in your own practices and get a better understanding of what's going on and how to improve things. And overall, it's all about creating the best experience that you possibly can. So with that,
and Bill, did we go over the closing?
We did.
Slide. Yes. Did I miss it? Okay.
Yeah, we've only got a few minutes left here. Do we want to open this up for questions?
we've got a couple questions that have come in. You want me to start with that? Do you want to play that last call with the
no, I don't. I think I'd rather, because I know people are busy and they need to get off the phone call. So sure. We've been more than happy to pass that one out to anybody who wants to hear it at the end. If they just want to email you can forward it to them.
And I wanted to mention on the survey that you'll see when you close out of the webinar, we just asked for a little feedback on the presentation. And if your practice is interested in the complimentary mystery shop, we'd be happy to do that for you. Or if you're interested in us sending out any sample calls, we'd be happy to do that as well. So the first question I have here, Bill, is our doctor does not want to share price over the phone. How do you feel about that?
We've had practices that have signed up with our service to answer those phone calls, and then they will, the doctor will request that we don't answer price. And the way that I feel about that is that you have to answer price. If you think about your own research efforts, if you call and somebody isn't going to tell you how much it costs, but somebody else will, do you trust the one that is not going to tell you how much it costs? And so, here's the challenge with that. In some industries, some of the services that are on the phone today, it's simple. The cost is what the cost is. Other ones, it is not. When you're talking about ways to reduce your waistline, it could be lasers, it could be liposuction, it could be, you could be talking about a $200 versus $2,000 versus $20,000. So in a case where you've got a huge price range, then, really depends on what procedure we have that's going to give you the results that you're looking for. It could be anywhere from $200 to $20,000. So what we want to do is encourage you to come in and meet with the doctor. He's going to look at you, assess your needs, and then based on what it is that you're looking for, your budget, and all of those things, come up with a treatment plan that works for you. And so one of the things about approaching price is you can't be afraid to do that. You have to own your price and be proud of it. And the way that you get people to understand why you're different than somebody else is through that stellar customer service experience that you're going to give them. Because if they call somebody else that's down the road from you and they get a crummy experience and that person's $500 cheaper or whatever it may be, but you're fantastic, they're going to come to you. Remember, these are procedures we're talking about. We're talking about some things that people have done a lot of research on, and you're not going to win everybody, but you will win a good handful of people.
I agree. Yeah, it's important to be transparent because you're trying to build trust on the phone. Give them enough to make them feel comfortable enough to take that next step, and make sure that everybody's, as you like to say, singing from the same sheet of music. So exactly consistent with how they answer that question. Next question here is, would you recommend charging for the initial consultation?
That depends on whether you have a high no-show rate or not. Well, you're talking about charging for the consultation as opposed to charging if they no-show. So let's nix that. That's a whole nother topic. But charging for the consultation, it depends. The doctor is involved in the consultation, yes. If the consultation is with the patient coordinator, no. If you're going to spend some doctor time, and a lot of practices they'll offer both. You can come in for a brief consult with our patient coordinator. That's complimentary. We can get you in as soon as tomorrow. If you're really serious about this and you want to have it done, you want us to have it done, I'm going to suggest you go for the full evaluation. That is with Dr. Jones. Now, we do charge $200 for that appointment, and when you schedule surgery, it comes off the cost of your surgery. So essentially what you're doing is you are charging for it because you want that patient to show and know how important it is because they are taking doctor's time. So that's how I would do it. If the doctor is involved, charge. If the doctor is not involved, patient coordinator only, then I would not charge.
Agreed. The other questions are regarding the slides and the recording. So we will we'll upload the slides to our SlideShare account. That's slideshare.net/OptiCall. And we'll also be downloading the recording, and I'll send it out to all that have registered for today's presentation. So we're right at an hour right now. Really appreciate everybody's time today. Great job,
thank you
Bill.
very much. Thank you.
All
And
right.
I appreciate everybody's time on the phone and hope you all have a great rest of the week.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye now.